Hey treaties, let's get fishy with it. Stay tuned for personal travel recommendations and a tasty cooking demo. Roll that intro. Hey, I'm Christine, and welcome to my channel where we explore travel destinations and the eats that go with them. I am a passionate home cook, and I started this channel to share my love of cooking. Today is the first dish that we'll be making on the channel, and it's something that you've likely had a million times before. But we're going to put a spin on it, of course. It's a summertime classic and something very popular in beach towns. This dish is for my seafood lovers, pescatarians, and 30-minute or less food preppers. But before we get started, remember to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you never miss a video. Let's get started. Baltimore, Maryland, a city well known for its crab cakes. We explore a variation of crab cakes on today's show. Other great reasons to visit Baltimore include having a nice stroll or drinks overlooking the Inner Harbor, visiting the Baltimore Aquarium, and last but not least, enjoying a good crab cake. But I also recommend checking out a tapa restaurant while you're there because they have so many good ones. Today's dish is something that gives me fond memories of my childhood. I grew up in a beach town, and I can remember days getting a bushel of crabs to pick and eventually use the crab meat to make crab cakes. However, now I don't have access to the beach like I used to, but I found a nice substitute that I consider comparable to the traditional crab cake. I call this red snapper fish cakes. What ingredients are needed to make a red snapper fish cake? You're gonna need your red snapper, of course. This I got frozen, but you can get fresh if it's available in your area. But if you get it frozen, just let it thaw out, and it's almost the same thing, really. So this was pre-cooked. We sauteed it on the stove just to get, it done. It doesn't have to have that nice coating that you would normally do on a fish dish because we're gonna repurpose the fish into the crab cake. I stumbled upon this dish by accident, to be honest. I was initially trying to make a dish that I had in the Caribbean with red snapper. Didn't turn out as I expected, so I thought, I'm not gonna waste this fish. Let's try it in a crab cake. But when I tried it, I was like, man, this is as close to a crab cake as I've ever gotten. I know some people do tuna cakes or some people do salmon cakes, but this right here, this is a good substitute. Other ingredients in this dish, typical to your everyday crab cake. I add other ingredients that you wouldn't typically see just for a little bit more flavor and color. So I have here some chopped onions, tomatoes, and celery. Some panko crumbs. You can also use bread crumbs or crushed crackers, depending on your preference. We have our mayo, and I have some stone ground mustard. You can use regular mustard or you can use Dijon mustard if you desire. 1 egg, half a lemon, and we got some seasonings here. So this is my all-purpose seasoning that I use. It's a blend of key spices that I like to use. We have a little bit of Old Bay seasoning. You can use another seafood seasoning if you desire. And then we have some chopped chives here, or chopped green onions, and dill. A secret ingredient that I love to use at my crab cakes. And the last but not least, unlikely ingredient, but I find it to add so much flavor to my crab cakes, or fish cakes in this case, and that is pickle juice. So if you buy a jar of pickles, dill pickles, the juice that is included from the pickles. Some people like to drink it, some people throw it out, but I like to repurpose it into my dishes. So we're gonna start with the freshly cooked snapper, and you're gonna wanna just flake it out almost like what you would do with pulled chicken or pulled pork, so that it gets nice and flaky. So I seasoned the fish when I made it with a little bit of the all-purpose seasoning that I mentioned, and also a little bit of Old Bay. Super simple. So it's almost broken up into a consistency that I like. I'm just gonna shred it a little bit more. It's starting to look a little bit like crab, to be honest with you. Now that you have your shredded red snapper meat, you're gonna add your ingredients. So the first thing I like to start with are the vegetables. So we're gonna add in a little bit of the onions, the celery, and the tomatoes. These are all optional, but I like to add them because I feel like it elevates the dish. You get a little bit more color than you would normally see in a crab cake, and it just adds more flavor. So mix that in. You're gonna wanna add some of the seasoning here. So the dill, the chives, got these fresh from the garden. Add a little bit more of the Old Bay because the fish is already seasoned with the Old Bay, so you don't wanna overpower it. So just add a little bit more of that here. And then optional, I'm adding more of my all-purpose seasoning, but if you don't have an all-purpose season that you enjoy, you can add salt and pepper. Mix that all up so that the fish is well coated with the seasonings. So we're gonna add in a little bit of the pickle juice. And I use pickle juice as a substitute. Some people use relish. I'm not a big fan of using relish in my crab cakes or my fish cakes, but you know, if that's what you like, feel free to use that instead of the pickle juice. And I didn't add a lot, so you can see it's not super wet. It's just slightly moistened with the pickle juice. You gotta add the mustard and the mayo. So I like to start by just doing like 1 heaping tablespoon of the mayonnaise, and then mixing it to see where we're at before adding any more ingredients, because you're also going to add the egg and you don't want it to be too moist. I do the same with the mustard, but it's more like a teaspoon, a heaping teaspoon of the mustard. Mixing again. So as you can see, I didn't add too much, that it's not super coated. It's looking closer to like a chicken salad right now. And then you're gonna wanna add in the egg. Normally just beat the egg in place so that it's mixed and I'm not dirtying up more dishes. Once you mix the egg in, you can get a better idea of where you're gonna be and how much breadcrumbs you're gonna need to add, or how much of the panko you're gonna need. Okay. So that is the consistency after the egg has been added. So we're gonna just add a little bit of breadcrumbs to it because it's really, really moist right now. And you don't want it to be that moist because you need to form the patties when you're frying it. So just sprinkle a little bit in there, and you want to err on the side of caution when adding the breadcrumbs because you don't want it to be too bready, but you want to kind of soak up some of that moisture from the egg. So I'm gonna add a little bit more just to get it to the right consistency. Adding a little bit at a time is what I recommend, because if you just go all in and add a whole bunch of mayonnaise and a whole bunch of breadcrumbs to start with, you may get something that is a little bit too soft to form a nice firm patty. So there we are. I'm gonna form the patties now. I just take a handful of the meat, and just like you would do a hamburger or, you know, anything else where you're forming patties, just shape it into, you know, a nice patty. And that's our first patty. You can see some of the color in there from the chives. You can see some of the onions, some of the tomatoes, some of the celery in there. Form all of the meat into patties till it's all gone. We're gonna saute them here. So I added a little olive oil in the pan. You want your olive oil to get nice and hot, starting to sizzle a little bit. So that means it's ready, because when you add your fish cakes in, you're gonna wanna add them to hot oil so that you can get a nice browning on it. So while this is cooking, you just wanna make sure that you're not pressing on it and releasing any of the flavors. And you're gonna cook them maybe 5 to 6 minutes on each side, just so it gets a nice brown. Because if you can recall, the fish is already cooked, so it doesn't need to be cooked here. You're just getting it browned, and then you're letting all of the flavors marinate together while it's cooking. So we're back with a nicely browned fish cake, our first dish of this season, a red snapper fish cake. I think it turns out beautifully, nicely brown. I added a little sauce on it. You could do a remoulade. I normally do a custom sauce that I make at home. Nicely brown. I'll cut in it so that you can get a look at what it looks like in the inside there. Smells delicious. Quick, easy, doesn't take long to make. You can eat it on a sandwich, a salad, or just on a platter with 2 sides if you like, or one side, however you like to eat it. But yeah, let's take this first bite. Yeah, this is it. Such a good substitute. If you love crab cakes, you will love this dish. Thanks so much for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, and follow me on Instagram at Treat Talk. I hope to see you next time, but until then, keep on treating.